Moat's remote education lesson, Coral Health and Disease. In this lesson, we will discuss several major threats to coral reefs in the past few decades, bringing us to the current status of Florida's reef tract and what scientists are doing to help. Three major threats to corals include disease, high water temperatures, and ocean acidification. In last week's lesson, we covered what happens to corals as oceans become more acidic. Corals have a special symbiotic relationship with the photosynthetic algae living within their tissues. This algae is actually where corals get their color from. Without it, we would see through the clear coral tissue to the white skeleton underneath, like we're seeing in this picture. When corals are stressed due to elevated temperatures, corals will expel this algae from their tissues, causing the coral to look white or bleached. So they change color. What's the problem? Well, corals get the majority of their food or energy from their algae. They cannot survive too long without this energy source. Sometimes corals can recover from bleaching if the temperature returns to normal, but if the temperature change continues for a long time or is severe enough, it can lead to death. Let's dive deeper. When humans get stressed, maybe from lack of sleep or overworking our bodies, it can often lead to sickness. When we are stressed, our immune systems are suppressed and cause us to get sick more easily. Previous research by Moat scientists showed that stressed corals are more susceptible to disease than others. So, similar to humans, when they are stressed, and here we can see a bleached coral stressed from temperature change, they are more susceptible to disease. And corals have many diseases to deal with. Coral diseases are one of the greatest threats to reefs worldwide, and outbreaks have changed the structure and function of reefs just within the last several decades. If you had visited Florida's coral reef a few decades ago, you would have seen reefs dominated by branching coral species like staghorn and elkhorn corals. If you go there today, you see something very different. White band disease swept throughout Florida and throughout the Caribbean in the late 70s and early 80s, and resulted in over a 90% decline of that species. And if you look at coral cover throughout history, coral cover used to be about 50 to 60% throughout Florida, and when white band hit, there was a 50% loss just in elkhorn and staghorn alone. And unfortunately, it gets worse from there. In 2014, a new disease called Stony coral tissue loss disease started affecting Florida's coral reef. This disease is much worse than any other identified outbreaks besides the white band Acropora die-off, those branching coral species we talked about earlier. It started within a specific geographical area and has continued to spread unabated for almost 5 years now. Stony coral tissue loss disease affects approximately 20 species of stony corals, and several of these are already listed under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. We can see in this photo before us that there's a large boulder coral that has been identified to have stony coral tissue loss disease. And if we go to the next photo, we see from March 4th to March 22nd, so just a few weeks later, what a grave difference we're seeing in the amount of tissue on the coral head. So that live animal, now we're seeing large patches of skeleton underneath. We can see from this figure that coral cover percentage for stony corals, the corals responsible for building the 3D structure of the reef, was around 5 to 6% throughout the early 2000s, which is very low compared to the 30 to 40% coral cover the Florida Keys has historically. Now, with the new introduction of stony coral tissue loss disease, we have started to see even further decline of coral cover percentage. At this point, the reef is estimated to be around 2% coral cover. And this is what we call functionally extinct. And what does this mean? Corals cannot reproduce on their own and therefore will become extinct without intervention. This is where Moat comes in. Through coral restoration, growing individual corals in nurseries and then outplanting them back onto reefs, we can make positive changes for the Florida coral reef tract. Here we are looking inside a raceway. Raceways are tanks used to house and grow corals for research and outplanting. This is a part of Moat's land-based nursery, which is located at the Elizabeth Moore International Center for Coral Reef Research and Restoration on Summerland Key, Florida. NOAA and partners like Moat have developed a bold mission to restore 7 ecologically and culturally significant coral reefs within the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. The selected restoration sites represent a diversity of habitats, support a range of human uses, span the full geographic range of the Florida Keys, and show a high probability of restoration success. The mission represents one of the largest investments ever undertaken in coral restoration, and the goal is to restore 25% stony coral cover. Moat's Coral Health and Disease program aims to understand what drives disease dynamics on coral reefs. In their lab, researchers can study the mechanisms that may promote coral health and resilience to major stressors such as temperature, disease, and ocean acidification. In the field, Moat scientists recently participated in a collaborative end-to-end survey of the Florida Reef Tract in hopes of identifying the bacteria causing the corals to get sick and hopefully identify a cure. If you're interested in learning more about how scientists are studying coral disease in the field, come along with us tomorrow in our behind the scenes video. You can access lessons, activities, videos, and interviews with our scientists all on our Google Classroom. To figure out how to join our Google Classroom, stay tuned to the end of this video where all the information will be provided. Thank you so much for coming along with us today. We're so excited to share with you all of the amazing research and programs going on here at Moat in the Florida Keys, and we'll have more content coming to you soon.